The next artist I want to share with you is Andy Butler. She's a designer and an illustrator based out of Chicago, Illinois. And I just love her illustration. I really like her pattern work as well. She does a lot of licensed artwork and it inspires me. I really enjoy looking at her artwork, and she's been very kind to provide this file so I can show you how she's masterfully used textures within the context of this illustration to really bring some nice organic flair to it. So that's what we're going to go over here. This beautiful illustrative design has these foxes and flora in it, and this is all vector. So once again, if we go to Keyline View, which is Command Y, you can see there's textures. Definitely there's textures, but check out the vector artwork. But all of those rectangles that are oriented in different ways, those are all textures she's masked into place in various areas to pull off the specific effect she wants. So that is how attentive she is to texturing her illustration and controlling those textures to make sure they show up exactly the way she intends. And what you end up with is obviously a really beautiful illustration. So I'm going to zoom in so you can appreciate this a little more. And you can see how this just has, it looks, I don't know if you've ever used gouache, which is a media of paint, but this has a very authentic look to it. It doesn't feel like vector art, and I think that's awesome. Right now, if you look in the layers palette, she has an overall texture over everything. If we shut that off, you can see the background is now isolated, so that can even be turned off. So she does a good job of organizing her layers, but this is all vector artwork. And all she's done is she's gone in and masked into these shapes various textures and then set those textures so they can be controlled the way she wants to control them. So in this case, it's a green type texture you can see here in the transparency palette, and she has it set to multiply. So that's how she's handling her textures. And she isn't using one texture for everything. She's using a lot of textures everywhere. But when they all come together, it works really well. If I zoom in on this bird, I love the bird. I think the bird looks really cool. But if I isolate just this bird and we go to Keyline View here, you can see in this one, she's using at least 5 different textures throughout this bird to pull off the look she has. And it looks great. Now, what we're going to do now is I want to deconstruct just a little bit just so you fully understand how these textures are being used. This shows the final composite of everything working together, and that looks really nice. But what we're going to do is we're going to focus specifically on just this one of the foxes from this illustration. And I just think it's important to show you kind of how she pulls some of this off. So if I drag this shape out, you can see that this is just a texture shape masked within this vector shape, and the opacity in the transparency palette is set to 80, and it's set to multiply with the color underneath. In this case, it's this kind of foxy red going on. But she has, if we go to Keyline View again, you can see she has these other textures also working in this illustration. This little dithered texture to add detailing around the eyes. She's also used it again in the tips of the ears. And that's how she's handling her details. Now, on the body of this figure, we're going to go into isolation mode. This is like the movie Inception. You just double click it, and you can see, if we go up to the top here, you can see how we're now in isolation mode. And when you're in isolation mode, here she has another vector shape multiplied, and that's acting as a shadow, but she has a place texture within this shape. So it's not just merely a texture that's laying on top of vector art. She actually embeds it into her art, and that gives her more control. And so I thought it was important to show that, because that is how you go about creating a complex illustration like this to give it not just an authentic flair, this could actually fool people into thinking this is actually created in analog, and that's the beauty of it. It isn't. It's created in vector. It's just masterfully done using textures. And Andy wanted me to definitely say this to those who are viewing her artwork is don't worry about style. A lot of people get hung up on developing a style. She says just draw everything, everywhere, every day, and your style will take care of itself. And I can't agree more with that. So I hope you enjoyed taking a peek at how Andy Butler handles textures. So make sure to grab those free texture set in the exercise files and put them to use in your own illustrations.